Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. Today we are concluding the study of the entire Torah. Now this is a very big deal. Jews around the world are concluding today, actually yesterday, and starting anew today, the entire study of the entire Torah. Now this is a very big deal. It's the way it was instituted in 1984 by the Rabbi, the study of Maimonides. What's unique and special about the study of Maimonides is that no other study of Torah covers every single detail of Torah. Even in the Talmud, you don't cover all of the laws of Torah. Even if you study 7 years of Talmud, you won't get the clarity of every single detail of Torah unless you do it through Maimonides, when you cover the 613 commandments in all of their details. Everything that you need to know. It's called the Mishnah Torah, as we're about to learn. Why is it called the Mishnah Torah? Because Mishnah Torah means second to the Torah. That all you need is the 5 books of Moses and this book, and you'll know everything that you need to know. He took the entire Talmud, the Mishnah, the Medrash, everything, he put it into an encyclopedia, classified it into 14 books, which we learn every day over the span of 1 year if you're doing the 3 chapters a day, or over 3 years if you're doing the 1 chapter a day. And this way, you're able to conclude the study of Torah either in 1 year or in 3 years. This conclusion today and yesterday marks the conclusion of both cycles. The 3 year and the 1 year cycle conclude, and they start anew today. And I want to highly encourage you to take this on for 2 very, very special and important reasons. Number one, as I explained in my writing a few days ago, the soul returns to this world. The Gilgul, reincarnation, happens when you have unfinished business, when you've not finished the purpose which your soul was sent down to this world, which is to fulfill the 613 commandments. If you have not finished the 613 commandments, you're going to have to come back in another cycle, another reincarnation. Now that's a schlep, eh? Let me tell you, especially if there's no time, if Mashiach is coming, if war breaks out in Iran, and as biblical prophecies in Tractate Yuma tell us, when Persia and America fight, that's just before the coming of Mashiach. So brace yourself. There might not be time for another lifetime. What are you going to do? That's why when you study the 613 commandments, it's considered as if you did them. So even if you didn't get a chance to do all 613 commandments, by studying them, you're actually considered like you fulfilled them, and therefore you won't need to come back as a reincarnation. But another special reason I want to share with you, and this one's amazing. A Jew turned to his rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak from California, and he asked Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi, I need a miracle in my life. I need a miracle. Do you know somebody needs a miracle? I need a miracle.
Yes, we all do.
Who doesn't need a miracle?
Sure.
He said, I need a miracle. So he said, sure, I'll ask the Rebbe on your behalf. He goes to the Rebbe on behalf of this Jew in California, and he says, there's a Jew who needs a miracle. The Rebbe says to him, to Rabbi Yitzchak, tell the Jew that that's easy. That's easy. I'm paraphrasing. All you need to do is tell him to study the daily Rambam. It's a connection. And the Rebbe explains that the Rambam, the word Rambam, which means Rabbi Moshe ben Maimonides, an acronym, is also an acronym for a verse in the Torah portion a couple of weeks ago. Last week, I think it was, to promote, to advertise my miracles in the land of Egypt. To promote my miracles in the land of Egypt. When you study Rambam, said the Rebbe, you will experience miracles. You will experience miracles in your life. Study Maimonides, folks, like your life depends on it. I can tell you that's the way I do it. Sometimes it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like this. I've had a long day. But I will not put my head on my pillow until I finish the Rambam. Rabbi Abraham Korf, the head shliach of Florida of blessed memory, he once said to the Rebbe, how can we do this? We do so much work, and I have to do more now. I got to do the Rambam. The Rebbe said, simple. Just don't put your head on the pillow before you finish the Rambam. And one final thing I want to say to you is that the Rebbe said also to many people that if you have debts to pay, you will not have any more debts if you don't carry debts on Rambam. Which means, if you learn the Rambam daily and you don't have a debt from last Tuesday or from yesterday or from 3 days ago that you didn't finish Maimonides and you're carrying a debt on your obligation to study the daily Rambam, if you do every day on its day and you don't carry debts, you won't have debts in the bank. Can you imagine? Yeah, does that make sense? Tell that to your bank manager, right?
business is failing. He goes to the rabbi and he says, I need a miracle to save me.
Yeah.
He says, just go to the, open up the Torah, and whatever page you come to, that's the answer. Chapter 7.
He gets to chapter 7. It's a good thing he didn't get to chapter 11. All right, good. So bottom line is, folks, this is why we study Rambam. Rambam is what connects us to our fellow Jews all over the world. It's what connects us to God. Imagine all the Jews connecting to God, connecting to Torah. There are 3 things that Torah says that are unbreakable in the bond. Torah, Jews, and Hashem. 3 knots are tied one to another. Israel, the Torah, and Hashem. And how do we make that bond manifest every single day? In the study of Rambam. And you can do it as easily as in your inbox. You get it to your email inbox. You could go to, there's ways to do this. You could do it online. Go to Chabad.org. Just go to Chabad.org/Rambam. That's it, simple. Chabad.org/Rambam. That's free. You can get it on the app. There's an app here. This is the app. It's called Chayenu app. Chayenu app. I think it's free over there. You can also subscribe to this book over here, to the Chayenu, where they send it to you in the mail. That costs a little bit of money. Not a lot of money. Less than a cup of coffee, much less than a cup of coffee. The Chayenu booklet, and you carry with you. It's awesome. You take it with you in the train. You take it with you on the bus. You take it with you when you're waiting at the doctor's office, and so on and so. What?
They mail it to you.
They mail it to you. Yes, it's a subscription. Sends you an email. See, look at that. Okay.
I get it every day.
Let us quickly conclude. Let us conclude the study of Maimonides quickly, and then we're going to start it anew as we're going to learn the founding principles of the Torah. Give me a few moments of here. Do not presume. This is the conclusion of the entire Maimonides. Do not presume that in the Messianic age, any facet of the world's nature will change or will be innovations in the work of creation. Rather, the world will continue according to its pattern when Mashiach comes. Although Isaiah states the wolf will dwell with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the young goat, these words are a metaphor and a parable. The interpretation of the prophecy is as follows: that Israel will dwell securely together with Hamas, with the wicked Gentiles, who are likened to a wolf and a leopard. As in the prophecy of Jeremiah, a wolf from the wilderness shall spoil them, and a leopard will stalk their city. So it's just a metaphor. They will all return to the true faith and no longer steal or destroy. Rather, they will eat permitted food at peace with Israel. As Isaiah states, the lion will eat straw like an ox. Can you imagine if Iran actually decides to feed her people instead of exporting global terrorism? Genius. Wouldn't that be amazing? Similarly, other messianic prophecies of this nature are metaphors. In the messianic era, says Maimonides, everyone will realize which matters were implied by these metaphors and which illusions they contain, because we don't actually know. Why? Because nobody's actually been there yet. This was written 900 years ago. Our sages taught there is no difference, will be no difference between the current age and the Messianic era, except emancipation from our subjugation to the Gentile kingdoms. The simple interpretation of the prophet's words appear to imply that the war of Gog and Magog will take place at the beginning of the Messianic age. The war of Gog and Magog. Before the war of Gog and Magog, a prophet will arise to inspire Israel to be upright and prepare their hearts, as Malachi states, "Behold, I'm sending you Elijah. He will not come to declare the impure pure, the pure impure, or declare the impure pure. He will not dispute the lineage of those presumed to be of proper pedigree, nor will he validate the pedigree of those whose lineage is presumed blemished. Rather, he will establish peace within the world, as it states. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children." Here, there are some sages who state that Elijah's coming will precede the coming of Mashiach. All these and similar matters cannot be definitely known by man until they occur. For these matters are undefined in the prophet's words, and even the wise men have no established tradition regarding the matters except their own interpretation of the verses. Therefore, there is controversy amongst them regarding these matters, regardless of the debate concerning these questions. Either the order of the occurrence of these events or their precise details are amongst the fundamental principles of our faith. A person should not occupy himself with the agadot, which is the exegesis of verses concerning these and similar matters, nor should he consider them as essentials, for the study of them will bring neither the fear or love of God. Similarly, one should not try to determine the appointed time for Mashiach's coming. As sages declare, may the spirits of those who attempt to determine the time of Mashiach's coming expire. Rather, because they get too complicated, and they also create anticlimaxes and they create disappointments. Mashiach is going to come on May 14th, 1862. Came and went, and now what? Right? It's not good for business. Rather, one should await and believe in the general conception of the matter as explained. During the era of the Messianic era, once his kingdom has been established and all of Israel is gathered around him, the entire nation's line of descent will be established on the basis of his words and the prophetic spirit which will rest upon him. As Malachi states, he will sit as a refiner and a purifier. So this is what Mashiach will do. Almost finished. He will purify the lineage of the Levites, first stating he is a priest of defined lineage. He is a Levite of defined lineage. Those whose lineage he will not recognize will be lowered to the status of Israelites. This is implied by Ezra. The governor said to them, they shall not eat of the most holy things until a priest arises who will wear the Urim Betumim, that's a special iPad. From this verse, you can infer that the prophetic spirit will be used to define and notify the pedigree of lineage. Can you imagine if they tell you, by the way, you were a Kohen? You'd be like, oh, that's interesting. When he defines the lineage of the Israelites, he will make known their tribal lineage alone, stating he is from this tribe and he is from another tribe. He will not, by contrast, state concerning a person who is presumed to be of unblemished lineage that he is illegitimate or he is of slave lineage. He will not downgrade. For the law is, once a family has become intermingled with the Jewish people, they remain intermingled. And here we ended up. The sages and the prophets did not yearn for the Messianic era in order to have dominion over the entire world, to rule over the Gentiles, to be exalted by the nations, or to eat, drink, and celebrate. That's not the reason. Rather, they desired to be free to involve themselves in Torah and wisdom without any pressures or disturbances so that they would merit the world to come, as is explained in Hilchos Teshuvah. And now the final law, in that era, there will be neither famine nor war, nor envy nor competition. For good will flow in abundance and all the delights will be freely available as thus the occupation of the entire world will be solely to know God. That's what we're going to be trying to do. Therefore, the Jews will be great sages and know the hidden matters, grasping the knowledge of their Creator according to the full extent of human potential, as Isaiah states. The world will be filled with the knowledge of God as the waters cover the ocean bed. This completes the Hilchas Malachim, the laws of kings, and the entire text. Blessed be he who spoke and the world came into being as a whole with all of its particulars. This concludes the 14th book, the book of Judges. It contains 5 laws and 81 chapters. Hilchas Sanhedrin, 26 chapters. Hilchas Eidos, 22 chapters. Hilchas Mamrim, 7 chapters. Hilchas Evel, 14 chapters. Hilchas Malachim, 12 chapters. Complete and perfect with praise to God, Creator of the world. Mazel Tov to those who have completed an entire study of the cycle of Maimonides, and we're about to begin it anew. So we're about to begin. Now let's take a look at the bird's eye view. We're going to start it right away. The 46th cycle of Maimonides starts right now. And I want to say that we're sitting in the presence of greatness. Because right here we're sitting with 2 of the most influential Jews in all of Jewish history. This is what's so moving. In fact, 3 of the most influential Jews in all of Jewish history. It's amazing. We just spoke about the importance of lineage.
Okay, right.
And we're sitting over here with 2 people who changed the course of Jewish history. Who are they? One is Mr. Crew here, who's named after the base Yosef. He's not named after him, he's actually descended from him. Rabbi Yosef Karo Crew. Rabbi Yosef Karo. Rabbi Yosef Karo was a 16th century Jew who codified the Torah into the laws of what we have to do, not like Maimonides did it, which is in all times and in all places, but he did it in the times of exile. That's how he wrote the Code of Jewish Law, rules that are relevant to the Jewish people in the times of exile, and he wrote it up. He put it together, and he called it the Shulchan Aruch, the set table, because just like when you go to a table and it's all set in a restaurant, and you go to the table settings, your knives and your forks and your spoons and your napkins, it's all ready, and the courses are coming out, it's all organized. That's how he set up the Torah. So instead of you having to figure out 75 different book sources, he put it all together in one book where it's nice and easy, set like a table, like a meal. Problem was that at the same time there was Mr. Isserlish, Rabbi Isserlish from Krakow. While Rabbi Yosef Karo was writing the Code of Jewish Law in Tzafat in the north of Israel, there was a Jew in Krakow, the ancestor of you, doctor, whose name was Rabbi Moshe Isserlish, who happened to be an Ashkenazi Jew, and he came up with the same idea. Unbeknownst, they didn't have like Facebook or Instagram and to know what they were each other doing. Both of them, he decided he's also going to write a Code of Jewish Law. So he wrote his own Code of Jewish Law. Now, what would have happened if they published both codes of Jewish law?
Schism between the Jews.
You'd have a schism. The Ashkenazi Jews are Sephardic Jews. Rabbi Yosef Karo is a Sephardic rabbi. Rabbi Isserlish was an Ashkenazi rabbi. There would have been a total schism. 2 different codes of Jewish law, 2 different Torahs would have drifted apart. The greatness was that your grandfather, Rabbi Moshe Isserlish, had the humility to say, actually, I'm going to write my book as a commentary on his book, as opposed to a separate book. He didn't need his name in neon lights. He said, I'm going to write my book as a commentary on his book, which is why your ancestors were related. And even though he lived in Krakow and he lived in Tzfat, and what happened was that they developed 2 different fonts. The font of Rabbi Yosef Karo was the square letters. The Rashi letters is the font of Rabbi Isserlish. And there, when you study the Code of Jewish Law, you see the font like this is for the Sephardim, this font like that is for the Ashkenazim. And that's how they created the Code of Jewish Law, which to this very day shines the light upon our lives every single day. We study it every day here when we read the law of the day, right? We learn the Code of Jewish Law. What we're learning actually is the abridged Code of Jewish Law. But in the original Code of Jewish Law, you have the 2 different fonts, which is why we're sitting in the presence of greatness. But what inspired these 2 great men to do what they did. They could not have done what they did if not for the Rambam, because the Rambam was 400 years prior. He was living in the 11th and 12th centuries. And he was the one who, whilst running away from the maniacal Almohads, who were the ISIS of their day, jihadis, he was classifying the entire Torah without a library. He had a library, but he was on the run. And he put it all together in a most organized fashion in the encyclopedia, which is the book of Mishnah Torah, which we're about to explain. And he did it in 14 volumes, which covers not just like the Code of Jewish law, the laws relevant to exile, but the laws relevant to all Jews, all times, all places, 613 commandments. And now we're about to explore the helicopter overview of the entire Torah as we begin Maimonides all over again right now in the 46th cycle.
Did Rabbi do his own Code of Jewish law?
Did the Rebbe do his own Code of Jewish law? The Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe did. You're talking about the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe, yes, the founder of Chabad, wrote his own Code of Jewish law. What he did was very, very interesting, is that he took the, he took the three great codifiers, Maimonides, Rosh, and Rif. Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi from Fez, Morocco. He took the Rosh and the Rif and Rambam, and he used them as a historical court. So he took their rulings and he went by by the majority rules. There are slight differences. There are absolutely slight differences. Now, if you want to follow along, folks, we are here in the Chayin on page 120, in case you want to follow along, right? So here we go. In the name of God, the Rambam's introduction to Mishnah Torah here goes. In the name of God, the Lord of the world. Today's study is sponsored by Corinne and Adele in loving memory of her son, whose 50th birthday is today. Michael Cala of blessed memory, Yitzchak ben Yosef Zev. Okay, so commentary here. Let's see. Okay, lots of action going on over here. All right, let's go. Let's get started here. Okay. Yes, the name of the app, Sandra, is Chayenu. Chayenu. Chayenu app.
Is that related to Dayenu?
No, not at all. Chayenu. Chayenu means our lives. Okay. In the name of God, the Lord of the world, then I will be ashamed when I gaze at all your mitzvahs. This is Psalms 119. The mitzvahs, this is the overview to the entire Torah, guys. If you understand this, you'll understand the entire evolution of Torah from Moses to today. Here goes. The mitzvahs given to Moses around Sinai. Well, not really to today, till Maimonides. The mitzvahs given to Moses at Mount Sinai were all given together with their explanations. That's an amazing statement. The mitzvahs given at Mount Sinai in this week's Torah portion, Yitro, were all given with their commentary. Can you imagine? How could Moses have received the entire commentary of the mitzvahs? I believe that he had a visual IMAX on Mount Sinai. Yeah. On Mount Sinai for 40 days, he was given a visual IMAX. You know what you can see in 5 minutes of IMAX? He was in the theater and he was able to see tefillin in all of its details, Shabbos in all of its details, kosher in all of its details. He was able to understand these things, able to see everything, right? So, as implied in Exodus, and I will give you the tablets of stone, the Torah and the mitzvah. The Torah refers to the written law, the mitzvah to its explanation. God commanded us to fulfill the Torah according to instructions of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is called the oral law. You cannot possibly fulfill the written law without the understanding of the oral law, which is the details. And that's why we have the oral law. Moses, our teacher, personally transcribed the entire Torah before he died. He wrote it down, called the written law. He gave a Torah scroll to each tribe, and placed another scroll in the ark as a testimonial. As Deuteronomy states, take the Torah scroll and place it beside the ark, and will be there as a testimonial. The mitzvah, which is the explanation of the Torah, he did not transcribe. Instead, he commanded it verbally to the elders, to Joshua, and to the totality of Israel. As Deuteronomy states, be careful and observe everything that I prescribe to you. For this reason, it's called the oral law, because it was taught orally. Even though the oral law was not transcribed, Moses, our teacher, taught it in its entirety in his courts to the 70 elders. Eleazar, Pinchas, and Joshua received the tradition from Moses. In particular, Moses transmitted the oral law to Joshua, who was his primary disciple, and instructed him regarding it. Joshua was the next Rebbe after Moses. Similarly, throughout his life, Joshua taught the oral law. Many elders received the tradition from him. Eli received the tradition from the elders and from Pinchas. Now, Eli was much later. We'll get the full flow in a few moments. Samuel received the tradition from Eli and his court. Samuel became a prophet through Eli. We read that story on the Haftarah of Rosh Hashanah. David received the tradition from Samuel. Remember, Samuel was the one who appointed David as king and his court. Achiav Shiloh was a very interesting personality. He was one of those who experienced the exodus from Egypt. He was a Levite, and he heard the teachings from Moses. He was, however, of low stature in Moses' age. Afterwards, he received the tradition from David and his court. So Achiav Shiloni came out of Egypt with Moses, lived a long life. He received the tradition from David and his court. However, it's also interesting is that Achiav Shiloni is known to have been the teacher of the Baal Shem Tov. Achiav Shiloni spent 10 years teaching the Baal Shem Tov from the age of 26 to the age of 36 in the year 1734 until 1724 to 1734. Achiav Shiloni taught the Baal Shem Tov the teachings of Hasidus, right? That's what he taught him. Okay? Oh, I think he just left. Cool. He taught him the teachings of Hasidus. He went home. And that served as the foundations of the teachings of Hasidus, of the Baal Shem Tov, right? Elijah received the tradition from Achiav Shiloh and his court. Elisha received the tradition from Elijah and his court. Yehoiada the priest received the tradition from Elisha and his court. Zechariah received the tradition from Yehoiada and his court. Hoshea received the tradition from Zechariah and his court. Amos received the tradition from Hoshea and his court. Isaiah received the tradition from Amos and his court. Micha received the tradition from Isaiah and his court. Yoel received the tradition from Micha and his court. Nahum received the tradition from Yoel and his court. Habakkuk received the tradition from Nahum and his court. These are the generations as we're about to discover. Zephaniah received the tradition from Habakkuk and his court. Jeremiah received the tradition from Zephaniah and his court. Baruch ben Neriah received the tradition from Jeremiah and his court. Ezra and his court received the tradition from Baruch and his court. Now, what's very interesting now, yes, as Mordechai?
Isn't that, I'm a little confused. This one got tradition from all those courts. They're all getting from different.
No, it's generation to generation.
Okay. Thank you. That's why it was oral.
Right, it was oral Torah, which was passed down, and we know the exact names of each generation, the leadership, and we know the court of that generation, right?
Can I ask a question? When we talk about oral Torah.
Oral Torah, yeah.
What Hashem explained to Moshe
on Mount Sinai.
on Mount Sinai.
Explanation of all the details, yep.
Okay. And then he in turn, that all got passed down. Those are the details.
These are the details, exactly right. Yep.
Hashem are the details.
When one person speaks to another, it might change the translation.
So you're worried about Chinese whispers. So what's the problem with Chinese whispers? When you pass it down, it could get lost in translation. Now, that would be a fair argument if there was one train of transmission. But imagine you have 1,000 people passing the same message from one point A to point B. Right? Then, if one of them heard incorrect, he's going to check with his friend, and his friend said, no, that's not what they said. And then check with another friend, then you get out of 1,000 people, you'll have more people hearing correctly than hearing incorrectly.
Don't we have in the Talmud fights between two different rabbis saying, I heard it from my teacher, and the other person that I heard?
One thing at a time. I just want to make sure. Do you understand what I just said, though?
Yes.
I want to make sure that that's clear. The chain of transmission, which is supported by multiple lanes, if you have 10,000 teachers teaching 10,000 students or 100,000, then the anomalies that will not have properly heard will be corrected by their peers. Now, why is there debates in the Talmud? That is something which I believe he's going to be discussing over here. The debates in the Talmud is subject to multiple different reasons. One reason is a debate that's based on logic. There's 4 parts to the oral law. There's 4 parts to the oral law. There's the received oral law, the way it's received in the way I just discussed. There's the derived oral law, which is the derived oral law, the way it's extracted using the 13 principles of divine exegesis. There's 13 principles which you read in the morning prayer before Hodu. We read 13 principles of how you extract divine exegesis and apply them to modern times, right? So there's received oral Torah, there's the derived oral Torah, then there is the decreed oral Torah. Decreed oral Torah is when rabbis of their times make up new rules because they're relevant to that time, right? For example, when you have a Tesla, which is self-driving and it's not relevant to previous generations necessarily, but they need to figure out a rule, or chicken. If they want to rule if chicken is fleishik or not, right? Or if they want to rule if fish is going to be meat or not, right? So that's going to be a third part of the oral Torah, which is the decreed oral Torah. And finally, there's the customs, right? This is very important. I taught all this in the Judaism Decoded course, which unfortunately is not recorded. So until I find the recording one day, I might have to reteach it. So again, there's the received oral tradition, there's the derived oral Torah, there's the decreed oral Torah, and then there's the customs of each place. The debates can evolve in any of the following cases. When it comes to the received oral Torah, one rabbi pipes up and he says, "Actually, I heard it from my Rebbe who heard it from Moses this way." And that carries a lot of credence. When he brings to the table something which we received. When they were unsure of the status of King David, because David derived from his great grandmother was a Moabite convert. They were not sure if a Moabite is allowed to convert for various reasons. Amasa ben Yeter stood up and he said, "I received from Shmuel, the prophet who heard from Moses, that the prohibition of Moabites converting applies only to males, not to females, and therefore Ruth is okay." So that's the received oral tradition. When it comes to the derived oral Torah, that's where you have a lot of debate. Do you learn it? Do you learn this? Do you derive the principle this way or that way? Right? When it comes to decrees, right? There's how do you apply the decree? That could be subject to debate. And finally, the customs are obviously debatable, right? So let's just keep on going here. The members of Ezra's court are referred to as the men of the great assembly. These guys, in the days of Ezra, the guys who built the second temple after the Purim story, these guys were responsible for building Judaism to 97% of the way we know it today. They formalized Judaism because until then prayer was extemporaneous. They formalized the Sidur. The word Sidur means organized. The word Seder means organized, that Passover Seder. They structured Judaism in a template which made it manageable in the diaspora. So the members of Ezra's court are referred to as the men of the great assembly. They included Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. Who was Malachi? According to some interpretations in the Talmud, Malachi was Mordechai of the Purim story, yeah?
They also found the custom of reading the Torah in public.
Yes, they established the law of the custom of reading the Torah in public, right? Some people did it once, finished it once a year. Some people finished it once every 3 years, like the study of Maimonides, right? And included also Daniel, Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah, Nehemiah ben Chachilai, and Mordechai the linguist. It seems like, according to Rambam, Mordechai and Malachi were two separate people. Zerubbabel and many other sages, 120 elders in all. The last Avavi member of this group was Simon the Shimon the Just. He was included amongst 120 elders and received the oral law from all of them. He served as the high priest after Ezra. Antigonus of Socha in his court received the tradition from Shimon the Just in his court. Yosef ben Ezra of Treda and Yosef ben Yochanan of Jerusalem in their court received the tradition from Antigonus in his court. Now, these next few generations are the ones enumerated in the beginning of Ethics of the Fathers. When you study Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, which is printed at the back of every siddur, is a beautiful study of the laws, of ethics and morality in the Torah. These come from the various generations of the leaders of their times, about 2,000 years ago. Yeshua ben Prachia and Nitai of Arbel and their court received the tradition from Yosef ben Ezra and Yosef ben Yochanan in their court. By the way, Yeshua ben Prachia was a teacher of Jesus. Jesus was a student of his who rebelled. Yehuda ben Taba and Shimon ben Shotach in their court received the tradition from Yeshua ben Prachia and Nitai of Arbel in their court. These were contemporaries of Jesus. Shemaiah and Naphtali, who were righteous converts in their court, received the tradition from Yehuda and Shimon in their court. Hillel and Shammai in their court received the tradition from Shemaiah and Naphtali in their court. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Rabbi Shimon, the son of Hillel the elder, received the tradition from Hillel and Shammai in their court. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 students who were great sages and received the tradition from him. They were Rabbi Elazar the Great, Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Yosef the priest, Rabbi Shimon ben Etano, and Rabbi Elazar ben Aruch. Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef, remember him? Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef is Rabbi Akiva, famous Rabbi Akiva. Okay, we're almost done yet, folks, and keep it moving. Received from Rabbi Elazar the Great. Yosef, his father, was righteous convert. Rabbi Shimon, converts received the tradition from Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Meir and his colleagues also received the tradition from Rabbi Ishmael. The colleagues of Rabbi Meir included Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Nechemiah, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, Rabbi Yochanan the shoemaker, Shimon ben Azai, and Rabbi Chanina ben Tradio. And these were all, some of them were killed by the Romans in the 10 martyrs. Similarly, Rabbi Akiva's colleagues also included the tradition from Elazar the Great. Received the tradition. Rabbi Akiva's colleagues included Rabbi Tarfon. We read about these guys at the Passover Seder, the teacher of Rabbi Yossi of the Galilee, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Now, we're almost done. Rabbi Gamliel the elder received the tradition from Rabbi Shimon, his father, the son of Hillel the elder. Rabbi Shimon, his son, received the tradition from him. Rabbi Gamliel, his son, received the tradition from him. And Rabbi Shimon, his son, received the tradition from him. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was referred to as Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Very, very important personality. Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Shimon, was known as a saintly teacher. He received the tradition from his father, Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon, from Rabbi Shimon and his colleagues. And now, what Rabbi Yehuda did is that he was the first one to actually take all of these oral traditions received over the generations. I remember, I think there was 40 generations here. We'll learn about it in a moment. 40 generations we just read about from Moses until Rabbeinu HaKadosh, and he put it down in writing. So Rabbeinu HaKadosh composed the Mishnah. The Mishnah, that's the first time that the oral Torah was written down. This would be 40 generations after Moses. From the days of Moses, our teacher, until Rabbeinu HaKadosh, no one had composed a text for the purpose of teaching the oral law in public. Instead, in each generation, the head of the court of the prophet of that generation would take notes of the teachers which he received from his masters for himself and teach them verbally in public. Similarly, according to his own potential, each individual will write notes to himself of what he heard regarding the explanation of the Torah. Its laws and the new concepts that were deduced in each generation concerning laws that were not communicated by the oral tradition, but rather deduced, as I mentioned, derived using one of the 13 principles of biblical exegesis and accepted by the high court. So what the sages of each generation were doing with the oral Torah is not only receiving the Torah from the previous generation, but also they were explaining it. They were talking about the derived laws, which they extracted by 13 principles of divine exegesis. And of course, the new decrees that they were instituting. This situation continued until the age of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. He collected all the teachings, all the laws, and all the explanations and commentaries that were heard from Moses, our teacher, and which were taught by the courts in each generation concerning the entire Torah. This would have been about 2,400 years ago. From all these, he composed the text of the Mishnah. He taught it to the sages in public and revealed it to the Jewish people who all wrote it down. They spread it in all places so that the oral law would not be forgotten by the Jewish people. Why did he do this? Why did Rabbeinu HaKadosh make such an innovation instead of perpetuating the status quo? Because he saw the students becoming fewer, new difficulties constantly arising. Sorry, it wasn't 2,400 years ago. It was more like 2,000 years ago. He saw the students becoming fewer, new difficulties constantly arising, the Roman Empire spreading itself throughout the world and becoming more powerful. Remember, the reason why the seat of Jewish learning moved from Israel to Babylon is because of the rise of the Roman Empire, who made life intolerable for Jews in the land of Israel. About 1700 years ago, basically was the end of the flourishing Jewish life in Israel, because the Romans made it intolerable. So they figured that the Jewish people were going to start wandering and become dispersed to the far ends of the world. Therefore, he composed a single text that would be available so that it would be studied quickly and would not be forgotten. Throughout his entire life, he and his court taught the Mishnah to the masses. These are the great sages who were part of the court of Rabbeinu HaKadosh and received the tradition from him. His sons, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Ephes, Rabbi Chanina ben Chama, Rabbi Chia, Rav, Rabbi Yanai, Bar Kafra, Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yeshua. Thousands and myriads of other sages received the tradition from Rabbeinu HaKadosh together with these great sages. Even though all of the 11 sages mentioned above received the tradition from Rabbeinu HaKadosh and attended his study sessions, there are differences between them at that time. At that time, Rabbi Yochanan was of less stature. Afterwards, he became a disciple of Rabbi Yanai and received instruction from him. Similarly, Rav received the tradition from Rabbi Yanai, and Shmuel received the tradition from Rabbi Chanina ben Chama. So what did these subsequent students do? As their teacher, Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbeinu HaKadosh, the holy Rabbi Yehuda did, as he wrote down the Torah, they also decided to write down their own versions of the oral Torah. Check what happened. Rav composed the Sifra and the Sifri to explain the sources for the Mishnah. He felt that the Mishnah was too terse, was too short, succinct. So he wrote Sifra and Sifri to explain the sources of the Mishnah. Rabbi Chia composed the Tosefta to explain the subjects discussed in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yoshi and Bar Kafra composed the Braitot. We have the Mishnah and the Mishnah is what was written by Rabbi Yehuda, but the Braitos are the comments that were not incorporated in the original body of the oral Torah. Braitos are like tangential texts. So there was and Bar Kafra, who wrote the Braisos to explain the matters discussed in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan composed the Jerusalem Talmud in Israel, approximately 300 years after the destruction of the temple. Amongst the great sages who received the tradition from Rav and Shmuel were Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda, Rav Nachman, and Rav Kana. Amongst the great sages who received the tradition from Rabbi Yochanan were Rabbi Bar Chana, Rav Ashi, Rav Asi, Rav Dimi, Rav Avin. Amongst the sages who received the tradition from Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda were Rabbi and Rav Yosef. Amongst the sages who received the tradition from Rabbi and Rav Yosef were Rabbi and Rabba. Both of them also received the tradition from Rav Nachman. Amongst the sages who received the tradition from Rava were Rav Ashi and Ravina. Mar bar Rav Ashi received the tradition from Rav Ashi's father and from Ravina. Now these are important to understand. Mar bar Rav Ashi and Rav Ashi were the authors of the Talmud. So the few generations we just read about now were the generations of the Talmud. Rabbi Yehuda the Great, Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, was the one who codified the oral Torah in the 2nd century. And it was in the 5th century that the Talmud is codified by these generations. And thus, I'm going to conclude over here. Thus, there were 40 generations from Rav Ashi back to Moses. From Rav Ashi, which is the closing of the Talmud, back to Moses. Right? Moses was 3,250 years ago. Rav Ashi in the Talmud was 1,600 years ago. These are the 40 generations, and we're just going to summarize them, but quickly. They were Rav Ashi, we're going backwards. Rav Ashi from Rava, Rava from Rabba, Rabba from Rav Huna, Rav Huna from Rav Yochanan, Rav and Shmuel, Rav Yochanan, Rav and Shmuel from Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, who was the author of the Mishnah, received from Rabbi Shimon his father, Rabbi Shimon from Rabbi Gamliel his father, Rabbi Gamliel from Rabbi Shimon his father, Rabbi Shimon from Rabbi Gamliel the elder his father, Rabbi Gamliel the elder from Rabbi Shimon his father, Rabbi Shimon from Hillel his father, and Shammai, Hillel and Shammai from Shemai Naphtali, and Shemai Naphtali, and from Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon ben Shatach. Yehuda and Shimon received from Rabbi Shimon ben Parachia, and Nitar Arbel, Yeshua Nitai from Rabbi Yosef ben Yozer, and Yosef ben Yochanan, Yosef ben Yozer and Yosef ben Yochanan from Antignos from Shimon the Just from Ezra from Baruch from Jeremiah from Tzfanya from Habakkuk from Nahum. Now we into the prophets. Nahum from Yoel from Micha from Isaiah from Amos from Hosea from Zechariah from Yehoiada from Elisha from Elijah from Achia from David from Shmuel from Eli from Pinchas from Joshua from Moses, and Moses, our teacher, received the tradition from God Almighty. Thus, the source of all the people's knowledge is God, the Lord of Israel. And this concludes today's chapter of the day. Good, you got it. And now the key here is, folks, what we learned today is that this was not sucked out of anybody's thumb. This is an unbroken tradition. We know the names of the people, unbroken chain of tradition. And by the way, you can look at my family tree, which does very much the same thing. It goes along this. If you go to jewishgardens.com/roots, you can see my family tree from my children back to Adam and Eve. 131 generations, jewishgardens.com/roots. You can check it out over there. Where, you think of Adam and Eve, you think of these personalities, Moses like Superman or Spider-Man. They're not. They're real people.
It's complicated stuff.
It's not complicated. It's actually very, very simple. And when you realize that the Torah that we study today, is just passed on tradition all the way from Moses, who received it from God in Mount Sinai. You left to the question: so if we have the Talmud and the Mishnah, if it was written down by Rabbi Yehuda the Prince and the authors of the Talmud, then what do we need another book for? And that is what continues in tomorrow's Maimonides, who explains the significance of what he did. It's going to be much, much shorter tomorrow. So we'll take a look. We'll probably do the rest of it tomorrow, and we'll take it from there.
The 40th generation to now, how many generations?
From the 40th what?
From the 40th generation.
Yeah, that's tomorrow's Maimonides.
Wrote it down to today. How many generations?
Well, there's 131 from my kids to Adam and Eve. Right? So you could figure out that. Look at my family tree and you'll figure it out.
I'm just wondering whether if it's 40 generations or 38, whether it's
another 40 for another work.
Another work.
Well, remember Moses. I'll tell you simple. Moses was, Abraham was Noah was 10 generations from Adam. Abraham was 20 generations from Adam. Moses was 7 generations from Abraham. So Moses was 27 generations plus 40 would be 67. So it's 131 minus 67 is going to be the difference, to answer your question. So 64 generations. And that is answer your question. Folks, I want to encourage you to study Maimonides. Take it on. Take it on as a challenge. Do one chapter a day. You could do this, guys. Do one chapter a day. You can do this. One chapter a day. You can study it, and you can benefit the extraordinary benefits of the study of Maimonides. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Chayenu.org, CHAYENU.org to subscribe, or to Chabad.org online.